please, Dr. Costa, do something for my wife. At that moment, Dr. Costa knows nothing of what was going on with his wife or even the guy. So he asked, okay, what is going on? What can I do for you? And he said, my wife is dying, and I believe you can help her. And he asked, how can I help your wife? About 30 days ago, he continued, the husband continued. About 30 days ago, she began complaining about a bad sensation of anguish, sadness, could not sleep well. But she could not stand sexual contact. So from sadness came remorse, a kind of a deep remorse. And she was getting worse. That time, I brought her to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist believed it had to do with some kind of trauma from her childhood, some kind of sexual related repression on that matter, and he prescribed her medication. So they came back home with the medication. And he continued and he said, after that, 2 days ago, my wife got even worse. Deep depression, vomiting, a little vomiting what she did not have inside. She did not have inside because she was not eating properly and was vomiting. So it was bad. And dehydration, dangerous, and deep state of weakness. And my wife is now, she was admitted 2 days ago to the hospital, to this hospital where you work, in the Department of Psychiatry, under the care of the General Clinic. And it was the psychiatrist who advised me to come to you. Actually, he said to me that it could be the last chance for my wife. I don't understand much, but please do something. So he said, Dr. Costa listened to everything, then he said, calmly, you know that I will see her case under the care of a spiritual medicine. It is apometry. Do you have any objection? I don't mind. I have no objection of what you are going to do. I want to help my wife. So Dr. Costa said to him, your wife will be submitted to a spiritual investigation in the spiritual hospital. However, we promise you no miraculous healing. Do you understand that? He did not promise a miraculous healing. His wife was dying. She was admitted to a hospital, dying already. She was under the problem for 30 days and drinking medicine. It is only to let you know the case and understand what happened from each step that she went through. She went to a medical doctor, regular medical doctor, who believed her problem had to do with the stress and had everything to be stress, the way she described everything. So he gave her a mild tranquilizer. She got worse. It did not work. Then the psychiatrist believed it had something to do with her childhood and repression of a sexual knowledge or something, or a bad experience or anything, because of the symptoms. Which symptoms she had when she went to the psychiatrist? Could not stand sexual relationship or a sexual contact. It was with deep remorse of what she did not know, weak, vomiting, and all the other things. Sadness, depression. The psychiatrist, vomiting was the other way. The psychiatrist understood and gave her what he knew, what he could give to her. It's not that he was against something. The point is that he can do what he can do based on what is palpable, based on the symptoms, based on what he is set to do. But it did not work because she continued being worse. So he said, go to the psychiatrist and ask for an authorization to take her from that clinic and bring her to the spiritual hospital for only 2 hours. Then she will be back in there. And you go to do all that paperwork, and I will, in this meantime, I will communicate with the mediums for an emergency. I'll call them for an emergency because it was not a regular day of healing, spiritual healing. And it was 6 p.m. He was leaving the hospital to his house. So, see, I want to tell you that it is not a game, and that people who are working or have been working on this new way of healing, they dedicated all the moments of their lives to bring to us those possibilities. So he called the mediums, and the husband brought his wife, and they started this spiritual healing. The preparation starts with prayers. We always do, the best thing to do is prayers. Started with prayers. Then he unfolded. It was unfolding and inducing the mediums. So unfolding, it is a kind of artificial somnambulism that he spoke about. And induce the mediums, and unfolding the patient, and an accurate inspection on the psychosomatic body of the patient. That were the first steps. It is an instrument of magnetic psychic research. We research everywhere to find where the root of the matter is. So let's see which was the next step. After that, the mediums saw right away that the patient's perispirit was different from the patient physical configuration. Now, what is the next step? He asked, what kind of perispirit you can see? They said, a nun dressed in an old style. So the perispirit should be that lady, 28 years old lady. But it appears a nun dressed in an old style. So, what is the next point? He made a projection, a conscious projection, with the consent of Dr. Marco. The mediums right away recognized or identified the mentors. Recognized the mentors. Dr. Marco was the mentor working together with the other doctors, but Dr. Marco is a spirit. He's a doctor. And the other one, Dr. Costa, is a physical person, human being, a doctor also. So with the consent of the mentor, Dr. Marcos, he made a projection into the patient's past lives to find out what it was. And it was a kind of jumping back on the past to find more about that. And what did they find? they found a nun, a personality of a nun that had been that lady. That lady was that nun in another lifetime. And what happened to her? Now we know that the lady was that nun, but what happened to that nun dressed in old style? She lived in that place. She went to that place to live in there because she wanted. And she became the person or the nun responsible for supplying the kitchen. And one day, that's the story of that nun. One day, she went out to buy new things for the kitchen, as she had done. And it happened when she was 28, about 28, living in that place, in that regime of imprisonment. And that day when she went out, she met somebody, fell in love with that guy at the first glance, and the same happened to him. He fell in love with her. They could not handle the situation and they went to bed. It was only one time. They were passionate with love for each other. They went to bed. She left the place. Nobody knew. There was no testimony. It was only herself and him. He could not go to the convent to do anything. It was an old convent, an old church, an old convent. They could not get in there. Nobody saw it. But the problem is that she condemned herself for having done that. She was the one who did that. It was a guilty complex. She believed for a long time until she died, and she died when she was old. She believed that she had done the worst kind of thing in the world, and she had to pay for that. Now, the cause of the disorder, we already know, guilt complex. She could not forgive herself. And for some reason, she was in resonance with that personality. And all those symptoms of vomiting, dehydration, deep depression, remorse without knowing the cause, could not stand sexual contact. Now we know why. She was in connection with that time, did not forgive herself, and everything came to the surface of this present lifetime, and it hurt her. And it was bringing her to death. So let's see how he went on with the treatment. Brought the personality to a state of conscience and reality, healed the emotional trauma, erased the bad memory of that time, the bad memory with that nun. In other words, through the techniques of apometry, Dr. Costa was leading the treatment in both ways, because he was the one who was leading everything. He was helping the patient on one side and the personality on another side. In the spirit, in the soul, because when we are incarnated, the soul is everything. And nothing is forgotten until resolved, until forgiven. Now, what else he did for both? He was right now working with the personality. What else he did? He put everything on the present of each one, and a forgiveness came, and found on the same treatment, they found that the husband of that lady who was almost dying, was that guy the nun found one day and went to bed with. And both the husband and the lady right now, the one who is sick, both have been together, incarnating together for many times, like soulmates. They are together for a long time for some issue, because nothing happens for nothing. It has always a reason behind the scenes. They are together for some reason, for families, construction, family healing, or whatever. So, but they've been together for quite a while. The same one the nun fell in love with. Now, what triggered the negative resonance with the past? This case study is a negative resonance with the past. And what triggered that? Let's see. 2 weeks later, the patient comes back, totally different. She came back to know what happened to her, and she wanted to understand what happened. Because a couple of days after the treatment, spiritual treatment, she was okay, just to recover her physical body. So everything was said to her. And Dr. Victor asked what happened. What happened on that week that she started with the matter, or the problem, when the problem began. And she said that herself and her husband went on a trip on a small city very close to where they lived to participate in a cinema festival. They went in there. Once in there, they took advantage of the trip. It was on a weekend trip. They took advantage on that to do a tour around the city. And they visited a church that used to be an old convent. When they went in the church, they went in different parts of the church, because the church is now a kind of museum. Now, they went to each part of the church, like the chapel of the church, the dining room of the church, the kitchen, where she used to be responsible for the supplies, the cloisters parts of the church, and other parts of the church. She started feeling sad by doing that, by doing the tour. It was exactly the time she started feeling bad. And it could not stop from that time on. Guys, I want to tell you right here, this is me saying to you, it is not a fantasy. It is not an imagination. These words are 2 words from Dr. Brian Weiss, Dr. Weiss. He says that, and I love that. It is what he does. He works with past life regression. And what he said, it is not an imagination. It is not a fantasy. But it happened, the second case study happened to his father, his liver, something like that. And he went to a doctor to see what was going on. And the doctor advised him a surgery. They see from all the best technology, from the best technology the hospital could offer, they saw his case. And they found that he should go to a surgery. And he agreed. It's fine, let's do it. It was from that time, 1 week or so. However, one of his friends came to visit him. He knew about the surgery and came to visit him, to be with him for some reason. And he advised him, why don't we see or go to an spiritual things just to find out, just to go there for a couple of hours, couple of minutes. to see if their point of view, to see another opinion. And he did not want much, but he went. He agreed, and he went with his friend to see a second opinion through a medium. They went in there. It was everything set. They went in there. It was a little time close or before the day of his surgery. And when they were in there, the medium, after all the preparation, everything, the medium saw somebody close to him. And it was not himself. It was another spirit with him. It was not him. He did not believe. He was not seeing anything. He did not believe, actually. But the friend was, and those working with the medium went on. They found that there was a suffering spirit. It was not a personality, as it happened to the lady, 28 years old lady. It was something else. It was a spiritual issue. It was a spirit. Now, they asked why he was there, what he wanted from that guy who was sick, Dr. Costa's father. And he said he did not even know that guy. It was not a kind of obsession like I want to do. I am here because I want to harm him. It ends up to be an obsession, but it was not an intentional obsession. He was suffering. And how come you are so attached to him? And he explained. He died with he was in a training, military training, and a grenade killed him. It affected the area of his liver and killed him. And his spirit went to that hospital, because that hospital was the hospital where the spirit who I incarnated used to go. So you are on the other side, but you keep the same habits. He was young for that kind of death. It was an accident, let's say. It could happen. He knew it could happen, but he did not want, of course. And he went as a spirit with all the same matter. And I'll tell you one thing. He was carrying that problem with him as a spirit for some reason. He, of course, did not accept the death. He was mad, revolted, did not want to die. And then in that kind of situation, the spirit keeps the pain and everything. So he went to a hospital to find solution, believing he was alive. He went asking for help. By being close to the father of Dr. Costa, who was in there at that time, by being close to him, he noticed, the spirit noticed, he was getting better. He liked the energy of that guy. And because he found that, he got even closer and closer. And he also found that he was not feeling the same thing. We call that induction. It is on his book, This Obsession and Apometry. It is a kind of induction. The spirit doesn't have the intention to hurt you, but by being close to you, the spirit felt better. And why not to be even closer if I'm feeling better? Especially the guy who did not believe was dead. He must believed he was alive. So in that case, the one who has the physical body will feel what the spirit was feeling. And the spirit attached to him stopped feeling what he was feeling. So that's the induction. Actually, his father had nothing in his liver. It was, the symptoms were the same as if he had that matter, but he did not have the matter. It was the spirit attached to him, and the problem passed to the other one who had physical body. Once the spirit understood was dead, once he had his body healed, because it goes always on the way that you can help both the incarnated patient and the spirit in that case. Always it happens to help both, and with forgiveness, of course. But the spirit did not understand he was doing that. He was doing evil, any kind of evil. But everything was set under healings and forgiveness. What happened was that the spirit was detached from him, received help, and was delivered to the mentors who were taking care of that, who brought him to a spiritual institution where he could be better, where he could solve his matter even better. The surgery was canceled because everything he was feeling stopped. That's the case study. It happened to his father. So it is just for you to understand one more time that it is not an imagination. It is not a fantasy. It is reality. Remember when he says the spirit science comprises all the reality around us and involving us. The reality of the relationship between the spirits and the human beings, the physical world. So it involves us and around us. That was the reality. The reality was that he did not have anything. The reality was that he was going to have a surgery without any problem. The reality was that there was a spirit who believed was alive and who believed was okay because he was not feeling anything. So why am I going to leave this guy if I'm feeling okay? So this guy is my solution, but he did not understand where he was, what he was doing. That's the reality. The reality is that he received help, and the other automatically was without the problem. That's the way it goes.